For more on the developing story around Assange, let's talk to Ray McGovern. He's a former CIA analyst and one of the thousands of people who signed a petition for him to be granted asylum. Well, the statement from Assange spoke about a grand jury already assembled in the US despite no charge having been brought. Is this legally possible and a real threat to Assange?
It is a real threat, and it's not only legally possible, it's a done deal. The only real remaining question is whether we need to call a sealed indictment a probable sealed indictment, as his lawyers say. But it's pretty clear that there's also an indictment ready for him to be tried under the very draconian Espionage Act of 1917, because, as you may know, in our country, there is no law against publishing secrets.
So is this a suggestion that the US law enforcement officials are really willing and able to, well, in effect, bend the rules to get Assange?
Well, they don't have to bend any rules. All they have to do is lean really hard on the Swedes and make sure that the Swedes do what they did in 2001, and that was to hand over 2 applicants for asylum to the tender mercies of the Egyptian police to be tortured in our rendition program. So the Swedes are anything but neutral. They can be depended to do whatever the U.S. wants them to do, and that's precisely why Julian is afraid that were he to be extradited to Sweden, it would be very, very quick, that he would be brought to the United States and face the same kind of treatment that Bradley Manning was treated to, and that, as you know, the UN rapporteur called conditions equivalent to torture.
Talk of him also facing perhaps the death penalty. Is that going just a bit too far? Would the US really execute Julian Assange?
Well, put yourself in Julian Assange's place. He reads the law. It's the Espionage Act of 1917. It was used to identify German spies and that kind of thing. One of the penalties is the capital punishment, killing. And so, you know, people might say, well, the US probably wouldn't do that. If I were Julian Assange, I would like a little bit more assurance than that.
So would that be enough to make the Ecuadorian officials accept his political asylum on the basis that his life is at stake?
Well, he's a quintessential example of someone who deserves political asylum. I think the head of Ecuador, Correa, is predisposed toward granting him asylum, and he's shown himself able to face up to the United States in many ways. He threw out the U.S. ambassador. He closed an American military base. He's suing Chevron. He's done all manner of things that show that he's a new breed of South American leader.
So, Ray, why is it taking him so long? Sorry to interrupt, but why is it taking Ecuador so long, then, to decide?
Well, I think you have to be patient in these circumstances. He wants to make sure that he does this correctly, and more important, he has to have some kind of idea as to how Julian Assange could be extricated from his embassy in London into a plane that would get him to Ecuador. That is the nub of the problem right now.
Now, do you think you, along with many of his other supporters, by signing the emails and the petition signatures, do you think that could have an impact and help Assange now in his predicament?
Well, there have been tens of thousands of such signatures on petitions. We were at the Ecuadorian embassy on Friday and again on Sunday. I think all this does have a cumulative effect. Those who want to speak up for freedom of the press, and this is what this is all about, need to do that. And I think that Correa is listening, and I would expect a decision. I don't think it'll be months. I think it will be weeks, and we'll get a decision. Then the problem will be, how will Assange get from where he is now, where he cannot be touched, to the London airports where he could be arrested.
The drama continues. Ray, it's great to talk to you as always. Ray McGovern, former CIA analyst, joining me live there in Washington.